welcome to our Coaching Conversations program. If you attended a couple of weeks ago, we did one on feedback where we talked about using the STAR model and structuring some feedback. This is going to kind of build on from that. So a couple of the concepts or overviews that we covered, I'm also going to recap on today, just so if you didn't attend that we have that similar baseline, but we're going to get into that pretty quickly today. So as always, myself and my colleague Ben will be running these sessions for you today. And as always, I always encourage everyone to turn their videos on. Let's see your lovely faces. And I will get into this pretty quickly. Now, so without further ado, let's just jump into this morning. When we did the feedback session, we talked about this definition of coaching, and I used the definition as given by a guy called Timothy Galway, who's considered a coaching guru. He was actually a tennis coach, but then became a coaching expert, so to speak, in terms of his methodology. And he had his own philosophy, which I really like, it's in terms of kind of bringing out the best of people. But kind of a key question it really is to clarify, first of all, what do we mean by coaching? And here, what we're talking about is specifically within the context of an organization environment. Now, I just mentioned a tennis coach, so there are sports coaches, 100%. There are life coaches, there are business coaches, there are marriage coaches. There's coaches for everything, and they all have their own benefits and own areas of speciality. Now, if you strip it all back, most of the frameworks, if not all of the frameworks that they use to deliver their methodology, are the same, or if not relatively similar frameworks. And really what it's all about is about getting the most out of the person you're working with. The terminology that often gets used is the coach and the coachee. And that often sounds like the coach is doing something to the other person. So, it's not the case. It really is a partnership approach. The coach is there to guide, to facilitate learning, to question, to challenge. And I'll be honest, one of the biggest skills you can have as a coach is just shutting up and being able to be comfortable in an awkward silence where you might have asked, a challenging question without feeling the need to jump in and fill the space and dead air. So look, here's a definition that I've pulled that I quite like. So, and I'll read it to you. Coaching is a process that aims to improve performance and focuses on the here and now rather than the distant past or the future. It's about unlocking a person's potential to maximize their own performance, and it is helping them learn rather than teaching them. So a couple of the things that I pull out from there is always, coaching is a process. You don't just do a coaching session. It is usually and ideally a planned process. Most coaching programs that I've been involved in, if I'm working with, whether it's managers or salespeople, whatever it might be, we're looking minimum 6 to 8 sessions. And I like to do those every week to 10 days. We can have some touch points in between, of course, but the actual process itself is about moving the needle. And that doesn't happen just after one conversation. The whole concept of a process of coaching is when we set a number of outputs or goals or commitments, is a few days later, I want to be able to come back with you. And the first thing our conversation is going to be starting around is, how did you get on? You made some commitments and you're accountable for delivering those. What happened? So if I'm not there to help that person own the accountability, often that's where we see some really good coaching conversations where people go, yeah, I do that. I feel really motivated. And they leave that session and they go back. They'll bump into someone in the corridor, they'll have a bad conversation, another piece of work gets dumped on them, they've got 50 emails waiting for them, whatever, and much of that enthusiasm drops off. So having a coach there in an organizational context is someone there to just lift you and keep you on your toes a little bit as well. Now, the other thing as well, it's about helping them to learn rather than teaching them. Coaching is very much a two-way conversation, but there's not a 50-50 split in terms of the balance. When we're coaching someone as a coach, I want to be speaking around about 20 to 30% of the time. And when I'm talking, I'm summarizing, I'm asking probing questions, maybe I'm offering a suggestion. But most of the time, what I'm looking to do is to get that other person or to elicit from that other person as much input from them as possible. Now, that's not to say they're going to have the best ideas and they're going to be able to solve all the problems that they have. And from an organizational standpoint, if I'm a coach within a business, I can help direct some of that because maybe I have some functional expertise. But here's one of the big mistakes that I see when we teach people coaching within a business and they go back to their teams. Because a lot of the time, not always, because a lot of the time, that person knows the job that they're coaching that person on, they feel really, or they sometimes struggle to step away from just directing and telling that person the best course of action. And that doesn't deliver the results that you want it to deliver. What we're looking to do here is help that person find their own path. Can we guide? Absolutely. When I was taught coaching, oh, it's embarrassing now. So 1999, wow, 21 years ago when I worked for AXA, they used the term sheepdogging. And I quite like that term, although that term maybe has changed in the last 20 years. But sheepdogging is, and I've got a sheepdog sitting right over here. But the idea is that you have a group of sheep and in the middle of this field, you have a pen. And as the farmer, I am the coach, okay? I am there to direct and to get those sheep into that pen where I want them to be. The dog that I'm using is the questioning and the skill sets that I'm using to help corral that group of sheep or that coachee into where ideally I want them to go. Now, it's not my job to ask leading questions. It is my job to ask open and exploratory questions to challenge their mindsets. And if they don't get exactly into the pen that I want them into, maybe they find another pen, but maybe it's even a better pen. That's fantastic. That's really what I'm looking to get out of this. So if you think about that concept, if you've ever seen, I mean, in England, we used to have, and they still do, have these competitions called One Man and His Dog. And it was literally a herding competition for sheepdogs and their farmers, farmers and their sheepdogs, should I say. And really what that's about is about how do you get that coachee to the place where you want them to be by using your own set of skills. And your own set of skills, I'm not talking about your functional expertise, okay? One of the best things you can do when you're learning to coach is to coach people in a role or a job that you know nothing about, because it removes the almost compulsion to want to tell people the answers to their problems, okay? So it is very much about helping them learn rather than teach them. And if you're learning to be a coach as a manager of people, this is exactly what you want to do. You want to empower people to come up with their own issues or their own solutions rather than keep coming to you with problems. I think I heard it, I think it was Simon Sinek who said it, but I like the concept that, you know, if you think about the people that you're helping to grow, whether you're a coach or whether you're their manager, is if you draw an analogy to being a parent. Now, those of you that have children, and we heard some children in the background a minute ago doing their homeschooling, you know, what do you want for your children? And once again, I'll credit Simon Sinek with this, obviously, but, you know, he said, you want to, you know, give them challenge, give them opportunity to grow, discipline them when necessary, absolutely, but give them the opportunity to go on and achieve more than you could. And, you know, the concept there is, and he said, if you think about what you want from your own people, if you've got the right mentality as a manager of people, that's what you want. You want to give them opportunity, ways to grow, discipline when necessary, and give them the opportunity to go on and achieve more that you did in that role, or maybe you could do in your career. And if you were a linchpin to them achieving something amazing, they're always going to be grateful to you. So coaching for me is one of the most powerful skills that you can pick up as a coach. And if you've never done any formal training, I highly recommend it. It really does help you structure, and I'm sure coach is going to hate me for saying this, but to provide structure to your conversations is a kind of real key output of it, particularly when you learn it at the beginning. And once you understand the framework, and one of them we'll give you today, it's easier then to see how your conversations progress. Awesome. So a couple of things that we covered off last time. So I'm not going to go into this in too much detail, but really there is a process to this. And these are the 3 steps. We're going to identify need. So from an organizational perspective, I'm going to look at my salespeople, I'm going to look at their results, and I'm going to start to identify gaps. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do coaching. And there's 2 kind of elements to that. Is our day-to-day feedback. This can be more informal. It could be can I have a quick word or a passing in the corridor, or an announcement of a positive bit of feedback or a success in a team meeting. But that day-to-day feedback is a part of that build-up process as well. But then what we look to do is build in formal discussions. That's our planned process here. Once we do that, we're then going to say, okay, you've now sourced your own ideas and your own solutions. off you go. Go and deliver those solutions. Be accountable for what you've just agreed to do. And I'm going to offer you support. And at the end of it, that's your role as a coach, right? Is to remove barriers. That's the whole concept of servant leadership. Remove barriers for your people, make their jobs easier to do. They will get better. They will get faster. So we are there to encourage responsibility. I should change that word. For me, it's about accountability. Provide resources and remove barriers. But it is a cycle. So it doesn't matter. I mean, it doesn't matter how long you've been doing your job or how good you think you are. There's always areas that you can improve. So if you can use your coach to help you get there, it is an ongoing process, okay? Now, once again, when I was taught coaching X amount of years ago, what we were told to do at the beginning of a session, and I'll touch on this as a little bit, or the beginning of a process, is identify a large objective. When I say large, it hasn't got to be like game changing, but think about a specific skill set. So I started coaching salespeople. That was where I kind of started my coaching career, and I use that term loosely. It was once again for AXA Insurance, and they were telesales people. And what we used to do is we used to work with a department within the telesales department, which was called CRU, or commonly known as crew. And what they essentially were was often the best of the best salespeople. And customer retention unit was exactly what it sounds. Someone would ring up and say, my premium's gone up, I'm canceling the policy. I don't need it anymore, and I'm canceling the policy. If that happened, you say, no problem at all. I'm just going to transfer you to our cancellation department, or whatever the term was, and they would transfer you to the crew team. Now, the crew team's job was to turn those people around. So you had to be very, very good at your job to be able to do that, because you're working against the tide, right? You've already got people who've made a decision. Now, their success rate in turning customers around was unbelievable. But what we had in place for them, actually for all the telesales guys, but particularly for the crew team, was a really strong coaching culture. And a lot of them went on to then be coaches themselves within that department. So, you know, what we used to do there is we used to identify, be able to listen to calls because they're all recorded. We could sit in a room and play some calls back to those guys and girls, of course, and say, look, what did you notice on that call? What worked? What didn't work? How could you improve that? You know, you didn't get the conversion. What could you have done differently? And it was a really great opportunity for me, because even though I'd done a bit of sales, this was a really technical sales job that I didn't know about. And it was a really nice place for me to earn my stripes, because I couldn't go in and give them the answers. I wasn't a crew salesperson. I wasn't at that level. But what I was good at was asking the right questions, probing, challenging mindsets, removing limiting behaviors, and then once again, surprisingly for me, actually shutting up and letting people talk. So that's a really powerful way of working, but that cycle is ongoing. So when I said about the long-term objective, we might sit down with a member of the team and they say, okay, so you need to work on your objection handling skills on this specific policy piece. And then every session, we would then do one particular focus. Okay, so this week it's about asking questions to empty the customer. Once we do that, 2 weeks later, now we're going to work on how you isolate the objection. Okay, perfect, we do that. 2 weeks later, now we're going to talk about giving your considered response. Now we work on that. So over a period of 6 to 8 weeks, we take a skill set like objection handling and we give it 1 hour, maybe 90 minutes over a period of a couple of sessions, and we really focus and hone in on that. So what that meant was we weren't just skimming the skills as we went through, we were deep diving on them. So at the end of a 12-month coaching engagement you've had with someone, you've seen this massive uplift in skill, in attitude, in confidence, and also in their knowledge as well. A nice thing is as well, the more you do this with your people, the more they'll understand the framework of the conversation, and it becomes easier, it becomes quicker, and also they already come in with their brains switched on, ready to go. Okay, they'll already have their own ideas. There's another, I can never pronounce his name, it's on my bookshelf, but I'm going to try and read it. There's a guy called Robert Kiyosaki who wrote the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and the whole series. And one of the concepts that he has very early on in his book between his two dads is one would say, I can't afford it, and the other one would say, how can I afford it? Now, if you take those two questions, and this could be anything, right? You want to buy yourself a Ferrari. Most people say, oh, I can't afford it. Now, from a neurological point of view, when you tell yourself I can't do something, it automatically shuts your brain down. You're no longer thinking, certainly not creatively. If you were then to say, instead of I can't afford it, and you ask yourself the question, how do I afford it? Your brain fires. And there's literally neurological experiments and research that shows this. So when you get into this situation and you get into an opportunity to sit with someone that you believe can be developed and has the desire to be developed, and you start asking them questions that allows their brain to fire, and you have the ability to shut up, even though they might be sitting there for 2 or 3 minutes going, oh, I can't think of anything. That is a very, very powerful way to get people's brains working, okay? And what we're doing is we're not just coaching them on that skill, but we're also teaching them how to learn, how to be self-sufficient in terms of creating their own ideas and solutions. So it's a really powerful thing to experience. So, and it's something I always recommend that we do. So this was something else that we covered off, because right now, I know some of you are back in the office as well, but you know, I can see Ruba sitting there with her mask on, but certainly in the office today. But the important thing here is that there are still going to be people that aren't at work. You can only have 30% of your workforce in. So if you're not touching base with your teams, it's vital that you do. So some of the challenges that we cover, I won't go into the full deep dive because we covered this last time. Obviously, technology is one of them. Our platform of choice is Zoom. We've used a number of different platforms in the last 6 or 7 weeks, and every other one that I've used is clunky. It doesn't really do what it wants to do. It's not as intuitive. So finding the right technology that is reliable, that everyone can use, and you have the ability to, you know, like I did at the beginning of this call, to educate people relatively quickly on how it works, that's one way to move forward. But make sure microphones, headsets, that's really important, because it really does change the focus. Logistics of those as well. So once again, I have someone in my team where she lives with 6 other people. The internet isn't fantastic. So, you know, if she puts her camera on, we can no longer have conversations. So there are some logistics around the technology and obviously the internet usage. But the key thing is really finding a space and time that's going to work for 2 people. Now, those of you that are at home, you still got your kids at home, you need to carve out that space really to have that conversation. Okay. Now, the structure is what we're going to cover off today. And it's a structure that's been around for 60 years nearly. So if you haven't heard of it, don't panic. If you have heard of it, it's a good recap. Now, the experience itself is different when you're coaching virtually. And I always recommend when you're coaching virtually, definitely make sure that person has their camera on, because it's really important that you can look at that person, even through a screen, to be able to start looking at some of their non-verbal cues and what they call paraverbal communication signs. Even the ruffling of a face. If my screen's off and you say something I don't agree with, I can sit there and pull a face at you. Now, if my screen's on and I pull that face, I can then respond to that and say, okay, look, you know, Bennett, I can see on the screen. Let's say Bennett's just pulled that face. I can say, Bennett, look, it's interesting. I just saw your facial expression. Tell me, how did that land with you? And once again, I'm not questioning it, because hey, maybe he's right to pull that face. Maybe I've just said something that is incorrect, inappropriate, it doesn't make sense, but at least let's have that exploratory conversation. So when you're just telephone coaching, or there's no cameras there, it makes it very, very different experience. The other thing is self-management as well. So as a coach, you have to role model best practice. So if you have a coaching session at 10 o'clock with someone, if you turn up at 5 past 10 past 10, you're not doing yourself justice in any way, shape, or form. So are you prepped? Are you ready? Have you completed some form of review from the previous coaching session, if there was one? What have you sent to that person beforehand? What I'll often do is send my notes from the previous session. So looking forward to speaking to you tomorrow. Here's a quick review. Please make sure you check in with me on all the areas that you set up for your accountability. So there are some challenges that come along with this, but it's really important that we don't shy away from those challenges. And here's the other thing as well. If you've never coached before and you think, okay, well, after this, or maybe I'll do a course and I'll go and do it, I promise you, the first time, not just the first time, the first few times that you do these sessions, they will go horribly wrong. Now, it won't be horribly wrong to that other person's experience, that they will still get something out of it, but you will feel really strange about it, because what we do when we teach people coaching is we give you a conversation structure that doesn't feel natural. Okay, that's not because it's not a nice conversation flow, it's because it feels contrived, because you're working through these stages of the conversation. So it doesn't feel right, and you will come out of your first few sessions going, I should have shut up then, I should have asked this question, that was a leading question. But the important thing to do is that you review yourself. in an ideal world, and when we work with organizations, this is always the approach I recommend, but no one ever wants to do it because it costs a bit more money, is if I train, let's say we do 12 people in a group, ideally I like to take them for 2 days. They haven't got to be consecutive days, but we take them for 2 days. One is theory, basically, well, 3/4 of a day is essentially theory. The other day and a half is literally practice, right? So we always do groups of 9 or 12 because you can work in threes, and it's constant coaching. We start off on made up situations, and we move slowly to more, real life situations, personal and business. So when you've come out of one of our courses, at the end of it, you would have delivered anywhere between 4 and 7 coaching sessions and had feedback on 4 or 7 coaching sessions. So that's a great place to start from. Now, my recommendation, this is where I've always seen it have the biggest impact. And when I used to work internally, this is how I always did it. After that, those 12 people, your job at the end of the day is to book coaching sessions for the next 8 to 10 weeks within your team. And the best way to do this that I find is then have someone, whoever your trainer was, go and sit in on those coaching sessions with you. So then what happens? I'm in this situation where I've just taught Ben a coaching program. Next week, he's in a room with one of his team, and I'm there to observe. Okay, I tell the team member in a nice possible way, I don't care about you. I'm here for Ben, ignore me. Ben then coaches his team member using our structure. At the end of that, that team member leaves and feels good and empowered. And then what we do, I sit down and I have a coaching session with Ben using exactly the same structure. What that creates is Ben's opportunity to practice the skills, and it's very conscious. If you think about the development ladder, we go from unconsciously incompetent to consciously incompetent. What we get you when you leave our 2 days is you're consciously competent. You have the skill set and the understanding, but you have to think about the steps that you're going through. What we do when we do the coaching sessions over those 8 to 10 weeks is we then take you to that unconsciously competent place, because you get 8 to 10 weeks of practice, 8 to 10 sessions of practice. And by the way, you might be coaching 2 or 3 people a week. So by the end of 10 weeks, you might have done 30 coaching sessions. But certainly in 8 to 10 of those, you then have someone coaching you. So you experience it yourself. You understand what it feels like to be on the other side of it. You understand how that more experienced coach manages that conversation, particularly in tricky conversations. And it's a really powerful way of getting people from 0 to 100 in a period of 6, 8, 10 weeks. So that's always the way I recommend it. So first thing I'm going to do today is I'm going to launch us into our first poll, and I'm going to ask you this question. Now, I've listed a couple today already, but what I'm going to ask you there, and if you can grab either your phones, it's just loading up now. Yep, there it is. Or if you open up a different tab, in your opinion, and that's what I'm asking for. I'm not looking for any right or wrong or dictionary definition answers. In your opinion, what are the characteristics and skills that a good coach possesses? So we've got listening is our first one here, and our second one, okay? And our third one, okay. Okay, effective communication, empathetic, listening skills, open-mindedness, okay, good, curiosity. Curiosity is a great one. It really is, because it's always about asking the questions and probing for more. Good. Well, I just thought, what was that one that came in? Listening, good, listening, open, okay, questioning. Absolutely. Look, questioning is 100% a skill set. There are people that can do it very well and not so well. Assertiveness, yeah, to a certain extent. Just don't misunderstand what we mean by assertiveness. It's not about, taking control. It's being sincere. It's about being confident in your ability to get the person around the place. Non-judgmental, that is a really critical piece. Any coaching session that you go into, you have to be able to remove your judgment from the person or the situation. Once again, from a sales point of view, if I'm out doing field sales coaching for someone and they've done something in a meeting and I think, oh God, that was ridiculous, there's no way I would have done that, I have to fight that bias because it does serve me no positive aspect in that conversation. Okay, refrain from giving suggestions, absolutely, unless it's absolutely critical. That's a really important part. Honesty, the ability to look someone in the eye and give feedback as and when they need it within that coaching structure is an important thing. A skill of connecting dots and coming up with the right conclusions. Perfect. And the way we connect those dots is through our questioning. And what we really want is the person that we're coaching to come up with those right conclusions. Okay. I saw another one in there, disciplined as well. That does take some discipline in terms of just getting good at the skill in the first place of coaching. Okay, cool. Leading to a certain extent, just all I would say, and I'm not too sure the context of that word leading, we're not trying to lead people with our questions, that they need to find their own way. So at the beginning, we set the goal and we send them towards that target, so to speak. How they find it, it's kind of up to them. We just need to guide them. And that's what we mean by that sheepdogging piece. Results orientated. Yep. Once again, if you clearly understand what your results are, that's important, because result might just always be the sales number. It might be the ability to ask better questions. Secret keeper. That's a really important one as well, because there are a lot of confidence that comes out in coaching sessions. So you need to be able to not walk out of there and tell everyone what's just happened in that session. Okay, good. So some really good stuff there. So look, a couple of things that I threw up into my list as I was putting this together. I think a lot of them have come out in there. One of my favorite ones in there is, and I use the word because sometimes it can cause a little bit of people to step back, is the ability to shut up. Really, some of the best coaches that I see will ask a question and you'll think, I don't have an answer for that. And it can get a really awkward, like, couple of minutes, but then to be able to just sit there, it's okay, take your time, gives also, for when we're teaching coaches this, I'll also say it gives you an opportunity to take a moment to think about where you are in your conversation, to make some notes as well. So just relax. Now, I have put in there, provide feedback when relevant, specifically when you are coaching someone within your team or your business. Ideally, what we do is we don't just go in and give our feedback, but if they're stuck and they're struggling to come up with a clear understanding of what just happened, or they're struggling to source their own ideas to change that, then we can offer those suggestions and provide feedback. But we always do that carefully, and we always offer it. So that should say offer feedback when relevant. So, I might say, Melissa, I have some feedback for you. Would you like to hear it? She might say no, and that's okay. Unless it's a critical piece, then I'm probably not having a coaching conversation anyway. That's more of a directed conversation around a skill set or maybe a disciplinary piece. Okay. So look, what we do, and if, like I said, this model was developed in 1968, or certainly launched in 1968 by Sir John Whitmore and a few of his colleagues. It's called the GROW model. The GROW model gives you 4 stages to a coaching conversation. It's the one I learned in '99. I've come across many others. What I find when we train people on coaching is the easiest one to get across. And I promise you, if something's been around for 52 years or whatever it is now, it must have some credence and credibility to it. By the way, if you find Google problems with the GROW model, of course, you'll find people that say, oh, it's restrictive here and it does this and does this. I understand that. And I'm not saying that it is the best model ever in the world. For me, when you're learning this as a skill set, this is a really solid place to start. That's simply it. And if you haven't come across it before, it stands for goal. And really what we're talking about here is, what are the skill sets we're working on, and what is the session going to focus on? So remember, coaching is a process, right? So if my process to work with one of my guys on closing more deals, I might be looking at their whole sales pipeline, their whole sales process. So it might be build rapport, understand need, present solutions, overcome objections, close a sale. So there's 5 steps essentially of a sale there. Now what I might do is, okay, I go out, I sit with them, and I notice they build rapport really well. They ask really good questions and they do get a good understanding, but then they don't pitch our product or offering very well and link it to the customer's need. Maybe they just then list, what a lot of SaaS people do as well, just list features of their product, right? So what we want to then do is, so now teach them or help them learn to, now you've got that data from the client, just tell them how your solution can solve their problem. Don't tell them everything that we can do, because we might have 10 factors of our product, but only 2 of them is relevant. So we're going to work on that. So we're going to work on your ability to close more sales. The focus of this specific session is to get you to present solutions more succinctly and more directly. Okay. And that's the difference between what we refer to as an objective and a focus. The next thing is reality. So what's happening now? And this is where we just ask lots of probing questions. So tell me about that situation. What happened in that call? How did you find that meeting? Why did that happen? So what we're trying to do is understand what is happening now, what got them to this current state of working. They might turn around and say, oh, well, I've always responded that way. Okay, great. Tell me why. Where's that come from? And then you might find legacy, that they were taught to do that in another business, or it's the way they've always done things, or it's worked in the past. But really what we're trying to understand is what's happening now. The other thing as well, as you're seeing that question, is what is working, what's not working. And that's a really critical piece to find out as well, to identify the gaps. Once we do that, then we can talk about, well, the options. So this is what's going to be different. And as you can see, we've got there, what different ways of working do they see? And what's really important is that we source, actually this works for reality as well, the impact or the result of any behaviors, changes or suggestions that they make. So if someone says, you know, in that sales example, oh, I should list all of our benefits, oh, sorry, in the reality section, they say, I just listed all of the benefits of our product. My next question should be, okay, great. What was the impact of that on the client? Because what we need to link is their action and what that action actually delivered. So we can either call that action and results, which is from the STAR model we covered off last time. So what action did you take? What was the result of that action? Or the other one that we use often is impact and behavior. Remember, we covered this if you were on the session last time, is that we want to get people to change behavior, okay? Behavior then changes impact. And the example I always use to people, and you can ask this rhetorically to yourself, is confidence a behavior or impact? And probably 80% of people always tell me it's a behavior. And it's not a behavior, it's an impact. An impact is the way you come across to someone. So if I'm talking to someone and I think, hey, this lady is really confident, that's not her behavior. Her behavior is, she shook my hand firmly. She's looking me in the eyes. She's clear in terms of what she's saying. She's not stuttering. There are 4 behaviors. Now, if I'm coaching salespeople, they're the things I want them to repeat. If I ask someone to say, look, you need to be more confident when you open your meetings. Now, they can sit there and go, okay, but in that deep recess of their mind, the question is, well, how do I do that? So once you get behavior on the table, then you can start talking about, this is how you do something. If I want to come across as more charismatic, there's ways you can do that. If I want to come across as more analytical, there is ways that you can do that, because when we say come across, it's about perception, right? So we create that through that. So it's important that we link any options to the result. So if that person says, oh, I should ask more questions to the client first. Okay, great. If you were to do that, what would be different? So we're constantly getting them to source the outcome of their current solutions. The last piece of this is we then talk about what is your will, or what's often called way forward. Sir John Whitmore set that out as will, which is basically commitment to task. So what are you going to do, when and how? What support do you need, and what barriers do you envisage? And what I always tell people, particularly new coaches, to do is be very, very careful of the word we, particularly in this section, but all the way through ideally. So at the end of it, you don't turn around and say, okay, great, look, it's a really good session. Out of all the options that you come up with, what are we going to do differently? It's such a subtle shift, but what you're doing is you're putting yourself into the accountability of that person as well. So we very much drive the I or you behaviors. So instead of that, the question is, there's a really good set of options there. Which one of those will you put into practice? We want the accountability of the session to sit with those people. Now, those of you that are from this part of the world, not just this part of the world, but certainly the Middle East is a good example of it, which is what's referred to from a cultural standpoint as a collective culture. Moving away from the we language can be quite difficult because it's very much ingrained into the way that you were brought up through what's called your social baggage, as sociologists call it. So when I'm working with people from the Middle East, sometimes they find it quite difficult and uncomfortable to move from a we to an I, because it's such a naturally ingrained part of their rhetoric. But it's really important that even if you can't desperately move away from that, and I always encourage you do, is that the accountability has to sit with that. But the power of the words that you use are really important. So we always move towards I's and you's rather than we's, okay? I used to work with some coaches, and at the end of the session, you know, we'd sit down and I'd be coaching them on their session. I'd go, good, how long is your to-do list? And they'd sit there and realize that they've walked out with 5 or 6 different tasks. Now, bear in mind, if you're coaching 5 team members and you're trying to do your job as well, you can't leave every coaching session with 5 things to do on your to-do list. You would never get anything else done. So accountability has to sit with that person. And that's where we get into the will or the way forward, okay? So there's a couple of, I think I've got one more repetition of this. What I'd like to do is give you a little bit more clarity on this. You have to excuse me because I just put an extra slide and I meant to hide this one actually. But really that's what we're going to do. What I'm going to do, I'm going to show you a quick video. It's about 3 minutes long that shows how this works. Now it's a little bit of a cartoon, so you'll have to read it as you go through. I'm just going to shut up and leave you with this for a couple of minutes just to show you how this would work. Then what I'm going to do is give you the opportunity to explore some of the questions we're going to use in each of the sections. And then I think that will start to kind of bring us to the end of our session towards a Q&A. Awesome. Right, here we go. Enjoy this. It's a bit of fun. Awesome. Okay, good. So thank you very much. That once again, just a nice kind of change of pace in terms of me talking at you for 40 minutes. It's a really quick and easy and a little bit of a fun way to show how that can work. So once again, if you notice, Kate, the manager, she didn't necessarily give too much direction. There was some questions in there. Some of them you could even argue, well, at least one of them might have been a bit leading, but she's focusing on the objective, which is about getting him better at his presentation. So what was his specific focus? It was about being more succinct and more straight to the point. The level of the person that he was presenting to didn't know the details. So it's about refining that and making sure he's talking to his audience, really. So it's a really nice piece. So look, if you think about that, that was 4 minutes, and obviously it was a very quick conversation. How long do you think a coaching conversation should be? I've kind of just thrown in one here just to kind of get some ideas from you. I've given you 4 options there on your poll, Ev. So what I'm going to ask you to do is tell me, what do you think a coaching session lasts? 15 to 30 minutes. So either that's everyone has immediately done that, or only one person has responded so far. Okay. 15, 30 minutes, okay. So yeah, we seem to have at the moment, oh, it's a battle between 15 to 30, 45, 60. Okay. I'm always scared to start speaking because the results suddenly change. All right, we're starting to lose the 1.5 hours. No one, I think, has said over 2 hours as well. So what I would say is that, yeah, that's correct. 2 hours is draining. It's way too long. If you're over 2 hours, the focus is not correct. So look, having a look here, 15 to 30 minutes seems to be roughly kind of where you guys think. Now, 15 to 30 minutes, if you are running a number of sessions and you and the coachee are very much up to speed with it, that would be okay. Really what you want to be kind of setting aside in your day for is somewhere around 45 minutes. So that might be 30 to 45, but usually what you'll find 45 is a good number. The first time that you sit down with someone and have a coaching session, you might be looking at 1 hour and sometimes maybe a little bit more, because it's about understanding what they want to get out of the session and clarifying what the objectives are for your journey together. Because bear in mind, it's a process and we're talking 6, 8, 10 potentially sessions. The last coach that I had 25 sessions was his minimum sign up, right? So that's where he felt he did his best work with people. And don't get me wrong, they were great. And I had him for just over 2 years as well. So it wasn't, constant repetition, but anywhere between 45 and 60 minutes is a nice amount of time to be able to give your coachee a decent amount of time for you to have a play around with. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to step out of this for 1 minute. We've got, where do we go? Yeah, perfect. 10 minutes to go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask my colleague Ben to send you out into some breakout rooms. So you're going to be with maybe 5 or 6 people. What I will ask you to do before we do anything else, before we go into our breakout rooms, is to open up your microphone, because it's really important that you guys talk about this. I'm going to give you about 5 or 6 minutes to take on this little challenge in your groups, and there will be some discussion that you'll require. Now, so what Ben is going to do is he's going to send you out to breakout rooms. Could I ask, I think you've got to go. Okay, someone's got to go. In the chat, I've just put the link. You'll see there it says https bit.ly, it's a bit.ly link. When you go into your breakout rooms, you'll be able to access that as well. So if I can ask one person to take initiative, grab that link, have it ready, and then share your screen with the group, that would be very, very powerful. Okay, is everyone, about 12 people back in? So the rooms are starting to empty now. So welcome back, everybody.
10 more seconds, Russell, and everyone should be back in.
Okay, no problem. Okay, team 6 has got 24-29 right first up. All right, Joe, so, Good for you. Good for you. Look, that's a little link that it's going to stay active for a while. So, I mean, if you want to have a play around with it, if I don't know if you noticed, but at the end of it, there is a section when you finish it to continue, and then it gives you a matrix with all the correct answers in, so you can see where all the questions fit. So if you've got any questions about why they would fit in a certain area, maybe you can self-source the answers there. So look, please feel free to have a play around with that. If you want to share that with anybody, it's just up through our server at the moment, so that's not an issue at all. Look, I hope that was a little bit of fun, because one thing that we often get asked from people is, what questions can I ask? And a big part of learning how to be a coach is establishing the right type of question. So it's just a nice kind of starter pack, really. If anyone that's ever done any sports coaching as well, I remember when I first started, I did my football coaching badges maybe 12 or 13 years ago, and everyone in the room, all they wanted was to get given drills. But the idea is that you understand the game well enough that you can then create your own drills to replicate what you're trying to do. And that's what we want you to do in coaching. Start off with a set of questions that are going to work for you, but then you'll build out your own vocabulary around that as well. Okay, so that's there. The other thing as well, and this is the last thing I'm going to share with you, and then we'll move to wrap up, is I'm going to share this. This is something I put together a while ago. If I find it useful, you might not, but I'm going to send it to you so you can use it or change it around, whatever you need. But I find this really useful in planning my coaching sessions. And as you can see, I've created these sections: goal, reality, options, and will. And it's really just an opportunity for me to plan some notes. So here I'm going to write down what I think the goal should be, or the context should be. If I'm coaching someone experienced, that's going to be blanked, because my first question to them is, what would you like to talk about today? So they're going to set the goal. But if I'm doing it, then I want to be able to have some questions to plan. If I've got some feedback that I have to give or I think is important, then I'll write that in ready to go if and when it's appropriate to. Then I'll have some questions down here. It's about exploring. And this check for understanding, by the way, it's just something I put in as actually a little bit of a guide for me to say, are we clear? Do we know that we finished this section off? Do myself and the coachee know why we're ready to move on? And then page 2 is, once again, you can see the will of the way forward. So we're looking at who, what are they going to be doing? What are you going to be taking on? And by the way, this list ideally needs to be blank or smaller than this list. How we're going to observe performance and how we're going to measure. And then I always get people to sign the form. Once again, it's just a level of commitment that we like to see in our coaching sessions. So what I'll do with that is I will share that with you as well. If it's of no value to you, then don't download it, but I will share it to you. I've just put it into the chat function for you. So if you want to download that before you disappear today. So that's it. I mean, look, thank you very much. As you can appreciate, it's quite a large topic to get into, but really what I wanted to get across today is that if you think about the framework of using GROW and think about the philosophy of what coaching is really all about and what we're trying to achieve with it, this is where you're going to get some really good stuff moving forward. If you've never had a coaching session yourself before, no one's ever coached you, look for someone that you can have a coaching session with. At the moment, there's lots of people offering free coaching. This isn't a plug, but one of my team, Oliver, who is an ICF accredited coach, he's offering free coaching sessions at the moment. If you'd like to speak to him so you can get an experience of that, you might even get, that's a terrible thing to say, you'll get value from it as well. Not you might get value from it as well, but you'll get value from it. You'll get an experience of what that coaching process is like. And also the only thing, this, is going to cost you is a little bit of an investment of your time. If you like the work you do with Oliver, then you can always agree to work with him on a longer term basis, but that's completely down to you. Now, if I'm sure he won't mind, the last thing I'll put out in the chat is his email address. So the last thing that we need to do, Ben, is the last poll activated? Is the last thing we like to do is just to get some feedback from you as well, in terms of what can we do differently, what can we do better, and maybe what other topics we need to cover off for you. And the other thing as well, just while we make that live, does anyone have any questions for me before we move to wrap up today? Once again, you can either press your space bar and speak to me, or if you want to type them in the chat, we can pick them up. Or we can say, well, you obviously either have no interest or I've done a good enough job to cover off the basics today. Hey,
yeah,
Alia, how are you?
Good. So you guys offer like coaching certificate or just trainings for already certified coaches?
Yeah, so all we do is, in terms of the training that we offer, we train coaches within businesses. So yeah, it's a good question. It's not certified by a body like ICF. What we recommend, I'm just trying to think of the name of the company. If Oliver's on the call, maybe he can tell us. I think it's North Point, a guy called Matt Trenchard. If you're looking for certification through ICF, and look, there's a number of good companies out there, but Matt's the guy that we always recommend. I like the way they approach their methodology. Oliver went through his program a while ago as well. So that's, if you're looking for an accreditation through ICF, that would be the way to go. What we do is we just help people within a business learn the skill set and they can apply it then. So if the certification is an important part for you, that's not something that we're geared up to support with. But yeah, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Ben, maybe it's North Point coaching. Yeah, that's if you're looking for the ICF certification.
Okay.
That's not to say there aren't other good companies out there. There are. I'm just saying that Matt is who we work with. Okay. All right. Awesome. Well, if there's no other questions or feedback, thank you very much. I very much appreciate your time, and I will love you and leave you all. The last thing we're going to share with you here is our upcoming webinars. We've got one on Wednesday on tactical selling. If anyone's interested in getting that out to their team, I just want to be clear about this. It's tactical selling, not selling tactics. So what we're going to be doing is looking at how you can build out your pipeline, particularly now. Even if people aren't buying, you can still be prepping your pipeline. So we're going to help you understand the metrics behind that and some ways of doing that. but it's not, you know, I listed the 5 stages of a sale today in this call. We're not going to be covering off sales skills. It is about how you can build a tactical selling plan. And then next week, we've got a series with Ben, which is on problem solving and decision making. So we hope to see you all then. Thank you very much for your time. Great to see you. And I will speak to you soon. Have a great day. Stay safe. Keep washing your hands. See you soon. Bye.